I think we're live.
You think people are seeing this right now? Like,
Yeah,
this
I
is where
think.
I should stop. I should stop picking my nose. And okay, I guess we'll see. Confirmed. Like, where are our
Yeah.
comments and stuff going to show up when?
Oh, you can't see them because I could
No,
see them.
you're gonna
All
have
right,
to like moderate. You're gonna
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to be
yeah.
like the yeah.
I got this. Let's see if it's practice.
Oh wait,
Donnie
I
is
saw it.
excited for this.
Did you put that up there? Did you?
Yup.
Oh, okay. All right. So then I can see it. Okay.
We
Thanks,
are
Donnie,
pros,
and thanks,
guys. We are
Michael.
pros.
We,
We've done
oh
this.
wait, can I do the intro now?
Yeah,
Should I
yeah,
do
yeah.
the
Go
because
for
this
it.
is a podcast, right? It's the BN Cubs podcast. We are here to talk Cubs. I'm Brett Taylor. That's Michael Cerami. We thank our gracious sponsors at Ankin Law, 312-6 million, injury law made personal. They make the BN Cubs podcast possible, including this live one that we are recording right now and also doing as part of a live stream. For those who don't know, the blogathon is happening right now, which is the 40-hour marathon session that I do in advance of Major League Baseball's trade deadline, which is tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central. We raise funds for Make-A-Wish here in Illinois. Great cause. They do amazing work. Love to support them. And so if you haven't had a chance to check out the fundraiser, you should be able to find it pretty easily on the site. So, yeah, Michael, let's talk Cubs. And the main thing, yeah, what Andy is saying right there. Didn't want to admit it, but that's a big game, huge win. I got to tell you, I would want the Cubs to win anyway, obviously. I would want them to win against the Brewers, very obviously anyway. But like at least 40% of my tension associated with that particular game was like, I personally don't want the next, 32 hours or whatever of the blogathon. All I would have behind me was the Cubs getting swept by the Brewers. And then there'd be no game until Friday.
Would have been incredibly terrible for a lot of reasons. And at least they also won like convincingly today. That was kind of nice. It was a nice big win. Shota looked pretty good. Not amazing results like technically, but I love that the strikeouts are coming back. That's like kind of more important than anything else. He's probably going to be fine. That start against the White Sox was weird, but not something we haven't seen from him before. Last year he had a start that was even worse, and he went on to do just fine thereafter. But, listen, I do feel like we occasionally are hanging on by a thread with Shota when the homers are such a thing. But he's been pretty good for a season and a half with injuries in both seasons. I feel pretty confident with him on the mound. Same with Boyd. I think it just wasn't a good start. It's very uncharacteristic of Boyd. That first game, he was just had no command. I've just never seen him with such little command, and for it to happen immediately after Mazeroski was like falling apart. And honestly, here's something, not to ramble on, but this really bugged me, is the Cubs were like 3-5 pitches away from knocking Mazeroski out in the first, because they weren't going to let him go to 45, 50 pitch. It wouldn't have happened. So a couple more, or if that, I think it was on Carson Kelly, it's just a horrible strike 3 call goes the other way. That game could have gone in an entirely different direction. As it were, Cubs lost 2 out of 3, but they won the best one, the last one. So,
well, and it's a reminder of how silly it was for some folks to see the first 2 games in that series and think, Cubs have to change their deadline approach.
yeah.
And it's like, even if they had lost today, you're talking about a team that's at worst 3 games out from the best record in the National League. Why on earth would they change what they're doing with 2 months left in the season? It's still the same team.
Yeah.
And it's not a lot to make up. And so now it's just 1 game. And that too is a reminder of the nature of these head-to-head matchups, how important it is to win them. The Cubs and Brewers will have a 5-gamer in a couple of weeks that will decide the season series, if not the division. So that could be, pretty important when time comes.
This is just, you don't have to hit the like button.
Corey.
I just love Corey. I just wanted to say that he's here.
No, you have to hit the like button. Corey's holding you too.
So, and here's the other thing though, too, is that there's a pretty realistic path for the Cubs to win the division over the Brewers by 10 games and still be in the same position they would be if they effectively, but without the home field advantage, won one of the wild card spots and thus weren't one of the top 2 seeds anyway. So like, of course you shouldn't change your deadline approach based on that, because there's a pretty close balance where like not much has even changed, because they are still well within the playoff picture, like well within it. Not even close to falling out of that.
Oh yeah.
So whether it's the division top seed or not.
Well, let me ask you, since trade deadline's coming tomorrow, imagine a world where the Cubs were likely to not be competitive for the division and certainly not for the top 2 record. But let's say they were firmly ensconced in a wild card spot, and that's what they were going to get. Would that change your deadline approach with this team? Like, would you think, oh, maybe don't push quite as hard on this or that? Or would you say, well, the team is the team and this is what they need?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think like that might make getting a second starting pitcher even more important, because if you have to get to the postseason and then play an extra whole series and then not necessarily have your best pitchers lined up for the DS, if you were to advance past the wild card round, you're going to want another starter. So maybe if you think the Cubs are going to get to the NLDS no matter what, by either the first record by way of the first or second record in the league, then maybe they only need one top shelf starter, and you can otherwise make do with Boyd, Imanaga, whatever one guy you get, and then whoever's pitching well, Cade Horton, Jamison Tyon, Javier Assad, what have you. Ryan Cox says Caleb Ferguson to the Mariners per Rosenthal.
So Pirates are unloading.
That's right.
Funny. That's funny. Do you know what the joke is on that? So
no.
It says Guardians acquire Gilbert Arenas for cash considerations. That is a very clever double reference to what's happening in the NBA right now with Gilbert Arenas. I think allegedly under investigation for some sports betting related stuff. And the Guardians, of course,
got
have
it.
the two pitchers.
Now I follow.
And he made it for cash considerations. That was clever.
Okay, so let's do this one. What do you think the Cubs do at the deadline? How many new additions? Let's just use this as a general talking about the deadline stuff. Can you bring me up to speed on where you've been?
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. Sorry, because I have the right place to start. It's going to sound weird, but the Giants just a bit ago, earlier this afternoon, traded Tyler Rogers to the Mets. Okay, and I want to start there, not just because his twin brother Taylor had just been traded by the Reds to the Pirates in the Brian Hayes deal, not an hour earlier. That's just kind of fun. But because of the return. Okay, so Tyler Rogers is that submariner pitcher who has been amazingly brilliant for the Giants this year. So have that context in mind, right? He's a very, very good reliever, likely to be very good over these final 2 months for the Mets. But he's pure rental. He's 34. You're not getting a ton for him, okay? The Mets had to give up 2 of their top 15 prospects, name guys. Now they've taken steps back, Blade Tidwell and Drew Gilbert, but like a lot of our listeners know those names.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jose Buto, who's a good reliever in his own right, who's controllable. It is a massive price tag for an impact reliever. And so that has me not saying, oh, wow, so the Cubs shouldn't try to get an impact reliever. It's more just, okay, I'm recontextualizing. The Mets are not idiots. They are run by an incredibly smart dude at the top who would have canvassed the market, would have understood what the likelihood was that he was going to be able to do what he wanted to do if he waited to the deadline tomorrow. And he decided to pounce and get Tyler Rogers now and paid extremely aggressively to do it. And so it has me wondering if, to circle back to the original question, what do I think the Cubs do at the deadline? How many new additions? I wonder if we are a bit out over our skis on how much the Cubs would be able to accomplish quantity-wise without really being aggressive in a way that we're not going to want to see them be. So, for example, adding like 2 impact relievers. Okay, that might
Yeah.
be a stretch.
No, I still think it's going to end up being there's going to be at least one combo deal is my guess for this deadline. And whether that is a starter and a reliever or maybe Suarez and a starter, is kind of how I think that happens. And I think that sort of allows you to do that sort of like 1.5 prospect value type thing where you're like, well, this one guy for this guy would be an overpay, but if you're throwing in another piece, but you're getting another piece in return, that's kind of how it will play out. I still think that I guess I'll just like lay out sort of my guesses. I think that there's a very good chance that they leave with a controllable starter. I think that we're kind of sleeping on how much Jed likes doing that at the deadline and doing it via trades in general. I don't know. I'd have to go back and like, he is like kind of a trade heavy president relative to some of his peers. And it kind of slides under the radar.
Certainly at the deadline. The Cubs, particularly under Hoyer, have been very active at the deadline.
I mean, even last year getting Paredes was completely, obfuscated by everything. No one thought that. And then over the offseason, he made several trades for Thielbar, for Tucker, for Presley. I don't know if I'm missing anyone, but that's 3 pretty big trades that have played out mostly well. Actually, why don't we do a quick pivot away from the deadline and talk about Ryan Presley? How are you feeling about him? Because it has not really looked great lately after a brief stretch of it looking okay.
Yeah, and how much of that was it was looking okay in the results, but that was because he was coming from a stretch where he was pitching poorly and the results were really poor.
Mm-hmm.
And if he improved just a tiny bit in actuality and then also got fortunate, so the results were like super improved and we think, oh, he's fixed. I do wonder about that sometimes, especially with relievers because the sample is necessarily so small. I think the Cubs are going to approach this deadline with respect to the bullpen the same way they're approaching it with respect to the rotation, which is even if you can tell a story about how they have plenty of starters, right? Like right now, if Jameson Taillon and Javier Assad came back in 2 weeks, the Cubs would have too many starters. They wouldn't have enough spots. And it's like, even though you can tell yourself that story, we know that's not true. It's obviously not what they want it to be. They know they need redundancies. They know they have guys who are pushing innings limits. They know they have health questions. They know they have impact questions, etc. We don't have that same conversation in the bullpen as much. And I kind of have been beating this drum because I think we should. The Cubs have great depth at Iowa. They really do. We haven't actually seen them have to reach into it too much, but they do have it. But what they don't have is enough guys that you would feel in a 2-run playoff game where you're like, okay, let's yank the starter at 5 innings and then let's get these next 4 innings because we've got the guys to power through. It's not me denigrating the relievers they do have. We've obviously had some really successful.
It's Brad Keller and Palencia and
Thielbar has been great, but
Flexen's gone now. Presley not trustable. Porter Hodge got blown up in Iowa,
and he got just optioned
who knows.
Down. And Pomerantz has been struggling, and and so that is all to say. That is all to say. I think the Cubs, pending that discussion I just had about the Giants and the Mets, I could see them wanting to add multiple relievers because it's not just what you need now; it's in anticipation of the things that could happen over the next 2 months, and so. Pending what they do, they're going to have hard conversations about guys like Ryan Presley, who there's no flexibility there. If he doesn't get hurt, can't option him, can't send him out in any other way.
They let go of Neris last August, like 6th or something like that.
Yep.
Right.
When it becomes clear that you're not going to have enough time within a period when you need to be competing to rehabilitate a guy on the fly. The Cubs have had success doing that with relievers. You give them about 4 or 5 low leverage appearances, let them work on a mechanical thing, and sometimes they come out of it. Well, the Cubs tried that already with Ryan Presley. And I'm not saying he has reverted and has busted out because he had a bad night the other night. But he has never, candidly, he's never earned my confidence this year. Just watching him, I just haven't seen it.
I don't want to directly answer Dylan's question here, but I have been kicking this around in my head, and it's like,
wait, we got to read it for the podcast.
Oh, sure, you're right. Excuse me. For the podcast listeners, Dylan asked, hypothetically, given the Giants' return, again, totally hypothetical. Parentheses. This is hypothetical, guys. What could the Cubs get for Palencia? So, obviously the Cubs are not trading Palencia for any reason, but this does sort of remind me of something. And it's that 2 years ago, halfway through the year, Adbert Alzolay took over the closer role, looked dominant, and then came into the next season and lost it. Last year, Porter Hodge took over the closer role halfway through the season, started the year with, as the number 2 sort of behind Presley, but lost it. Palencia this year took over the closer role. And like each of those guys are sort of like not failed prospects, but like they were sort of past their hype phase. Hodge is a little different for a lot of reasons, and I just do want to think about that, not only for next season and beyond, but down the stretch. Palencia looks great right now, but he does not have a very long track record of doing what he's doing right now. I don't think that's going to change, but I'm just saying, even that makes me nervous and underscores the need for a reliever, potentially one of those guys that have multiple years of control too. And so I don't know, is your confidence level in Palencia, has that changed at all over the season? I mean, I feel like we're at maximum trust with him right now, but he's a very inexperienced closer. To get no one that could step into the role seems like a giant risk, massive. Not even just for performance, but even for just if he doesn't stay healthy for whatever reason. So I guess this is all a long way of saying, is there any way they can actually leave without getting a Pete Fairbanks or Duran or Jax or Bednar, one of the guys that has had closing, Finnegan with closing experience, just in case you need someone else to close?
Well, I think about two things about Dylan's question and what you're saying. It's not just Alzolay and who else did you mention? Alzolay and
Hodge or Porter Hodge.
Right. It's also, we've seen this many times with younger relievers who had fantastic full seasons, and we come into spring training. It's like, well, thank goodness they have that guy. Saw it with Keegan Thompson. Remember how good he was? Brandon Hughes. Remember what happened with him? Luke Little even had a second half last year where it's like, oh yeah, I got him. And it's been a struggle. And so it's a lot of these relievers. There's a lot of these relievers that are pre-arbitration, known to have high ceilings, maybe recently converted from starting in the upper minors.
Rowan Wick is another name.
Rowan Wick's another one. Yep. And
it makes me nervous.
It's not the case that like Daniel Palencia is going to have regression later this year or next year because it's happened to other guys. It's more just nature of, we can't feel as confident that they are set in stone as perhaps you would even a starting pitching prospect who gets established.
Right.
Which, by the way, we don't feel certain and confident in those guys. How many years does Javier Assad have to prove himself for us to be like, okay, he's probably pretty good? Now he's coming back from injury, so that changes.
It's going to be the same thing next year. It's going to be 4 years in a row of having to prove himself.
The second thing that I think about, to your point, and this has a direct relation to the trade deadline, is in 2016, little different circumstance for the Cubs as a team, because by this point, they had turned around their little cold streak and they were back to just blowing everybody away. They were, guaranteed to make the playoffs. Now, granted, there was no bye back then, so they were still going to have to play in the NLDS for that, which was the first round. But they had Hector Rondon, who was looking great and who was very much in that same mold. They pre-armed reliever who was
perfect
a late conversion. I mean, it's very, very similar circumstances. And they also had Pedro Strop setting him up, who was established and fantastic at that time. And so you could argue, and then they had a bunch of really nice complementary relievers pitching behind a staff that was like one of the most loaded pitching staffs that we've seen.
That never missed a start. I mean, that was ridiculous.
And so that Cubs team, though, knew we got to have someone to pair with these guys. And if it's a closer that takes the job, sorry, Hector, you can, pitch and set up. And that was the way it went. And we all know Cubs, of course, went out and got Aroldis Chapman and paid an extremely steep price to get him. And I don't think they make it through the postseason if they don't make that trade. I think that he was critical to that. So different, slightly different front office, but obviously the bones are still there. I think they think about it the same way. So I think probably the front office is thinking about making a back end addition as much as they're thinking about adding a third baseman.
Yeah, that's kind of that's the headline. I was going to say the bottom line. Either way, it is the concluding thought here is that it seems likely to be as necessary that they add a reliever as it is that they add a third baseman. I guess I would say a starter remains a more important priority. But those two things are right there. And, it's not entirely unrelated to Matt Shaw looking better because he kind of has, and it's not just the results. I like that he's pulling the ball more. He actually had an opposite field. It might've been a line out, but, and I was like, hey, no. We pull the ball now. Come on, buddy. Other way. But that's whatever. I don't know. I think that there are ways to make it work. And I think if you are committed to keeping Moises Ballesteros up, you can play around with moving Hap or Suzuki into left and Hap to the bench and Ballesteros to DH or whatever you need to do to make that sort of that day's offensive group match the opposing pitcher better. But also there's a chance that Ballesteros is gone, I guess, too. So we'll see. But
yeah, I mean, he's a potential trade candidate insofar as literally every prospect in the Cubs system is a potential trade candidate, given the multi-year starters that they're looking at, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think it's realistic to say that any prospect is out of the discussion if you're talking about Joe Ryan, Mackenzie Gore, Edward Cabrera, that group of starters. But as far as, well, go ahead. Do we have any other?
Well, I was gonna say, do you have what about Luis Severino? What do you think about him as a target?
Nope, because the third year of his deal, I believe, is a player option for a huge dollar amount. So,
the A's, what did they backload it all?
Yeah, it's like $25 million or something. For me, so for folks who don't know, historically, players who have opt-outs coming or significant player options thereafter, they basically never get traded at the deadline. And every year people talk about it, and they never say it firmly enough. It basically never happens because the acquiring team has to take on the risk that they will get the player, having paid a big price in trade, and then the guy gets hurt in September and gets hurt seriously, has to have surgery, misses the next season, and you're the team that has to pay that entire amount because, of course, he does not opt out or he picks up his player option, and you're on the hook. And teams just do not take that risk. And I don't know why trading teams
put a finer line on that, or point on that though. It's that because obviously people are given player options all the time. You don't have to give up a prospect and also the risk of the player option. That's I feel like there's some cognitive dissonance there. Well, if this contract exists, then clearly
you have risk if you sign them to it. But that's different too, because you're signing them to it thinking about the guarantee that you're getting or that you're giving them in exchange for that first year
for the first year. Right.
But at the deadline, the risk is just disproportionate because you're talking about a couple months weighed against however much dead money plus prospect cost. Because again, if they perform for you for those 2 months, they opt out. It's not like you're getting them for that second or third or fourth year. You're trading. You're trading for the 2 months. You're paying for 2 months in trade maximum, but also risking it being much worse than that.
I mean, it seems like there would be enough of an incentive for executives to bake in appropriate value to any deal. But just it doesn't happen, and you're right about that.
Conditional money, right? Like you say, if he gets hurt, then we'll cover half. but they never do it. There has to be a reason, but they never do that. So
this is sort of a good pivot because we were talking about relievers a lot. Do you have a preference among, Duran, Jax, Fairbanks, Bednar? Who else have they been connected to? Chapman before the Red Sox decided to be good. I don't know. Is there anyone else I'm missing? Those are some of the big ones. Suarez, Iglesias.
Yeah, and Doval. Now that the Giants are selling. I obviously I love what Suarez would bring to the Cubs bullpen. Now, not to belabor it, he also has player options after this year. He has $2 $8 million. The risk there is slightly less because it's spread over 2 years of player options, and he's a reliever, just a little bit less risk, and it's so little money. It's $8 million each year that even if he gets hurt, he still might opt out, so he can sign a bigger deal. So I definitely like him. Cubs would have to be clever on that one because the Padres want big league pieces to make that happen. David Bednar has just always been a guy I really like. Bounced back huge this year. A little bit of risk because a lot of it's built on his splitter, which, if it's come and gone for him before, maybe I just am burned by Mark Leiter Jr.
Mark Leiter Jr. is exactly right.
It was just, he will forever live with me as like the most pronounced example of a guy who completely lives and dies by one pitch. And not because it was the only pitch he threw, but it was like nothing else in his arsenal worked unless the splitter was there threatening lefties. And so, but Bednar has bounced back significantly. I like that you'd have him for another year, but it's not super cheap. It's like $10 million, I think, next year. And I think a lot of teams will balk at that. I think they will not prefer him in trade because they don't want to commit in advance to $10 million for a very good reliever. Even though he would, of course, get more than that on the open market. But a lot of mid-tier and small market teams just don't want that on their books for next year. And so I like that perhaps his acquisition price might be more realistic than some of these other guys. What about you?
Well, so I'm going to sort of almost do the flip version of this, is because Pete Fairbanks, like on paper at first glance, looks like a no-brainer pick. A lot of closing experience, 18 saves this year, 2.75 ERA. But at the same time, his velo has dropped the last 2 years. He was like 99. Now he's like 97. His strikeout rate has plummeted. He's a career 30% guy, 20.2% this year, which, I mean, that's troubling to me. It would be a little less troubling if his hard hit rate or exit velocity weren't also both up. His barrel rate is crazy low, and that's good. And that's because he's getting more ground balls than usual, but I don't know. I feel like he's got like outsized place in my mind of the quality of reliever he is that he might not match this year in reality. And so that kind of scares me off a little bit. I don't know. Have you given any thought to him specifically?
Yeah, I mean, he was a guy because it was at least 1, maybe 2 years that were like those freak reliever years where it was just like over, and they get talked a lot. It was like Mason Miller last year. Like if you check in on Mason Miller, have you noticed people aren't talking about Mason Miller as much this year?
Yeah.
And it's, he's still been good, but he's not having one of those like freak years.
Yep.
And so,
I mean, Jackson Duran for me are the two best names. I like Duran. I like his velocity. I think that when Daniel Palencia comes in and can throw strikes at 100 plus miles an hour, it feels, let me rephrase all of this. At the beginning of this year, when Presley first started saving games for the Cubs, I remember so specifically that I texted you.
Yeah.
And I was like, the Chicago Cubs in the year 2025 have a closer coming in and throwing 93 miles an hour. Like, what are we doing? This is not, every time we face a good team, their closers throwing 101, 102, like not like 97, 98, like 101. So I kind of am all in on big velocity for late in games. And I'm also I'm biased towards strikeout rate for relievers over ground ball or, any type of contact that they make because of the nature of when those guys are coming into games. There is a place for ground ball relievers in every bullpen, but like, if you're going to give me a guy that's going to be an 8th or 9th inning guy, depending on which one plays, they need to be strikeout guys with overpowering stuff. That's what's going to happen in the postseason. There's going to be bases loaded, and they're going to need to come in for, the final out of one inning and then the whole next inning. And it needs to be a strikeout guy because a ground ball can find a hole. And so that's why Jax, Duran, Bednar to an extent are the sort of the guys that I prefer over a guy like Fairbanks, for example, who's only striking out 20%. I mean, I know he's succeeding, but that's not like necessarily, don't get me wrong. If we get him, I'll be very happy because he will immediately be the second best reliever I think the Cubs have. I mean, maybe there's a case for someone else, but anyway, that's kind of where I am about that. I do have a transition to a next little topic here because we never, ever, ever, ever do this. I thought it was fair to do this at least once. Phil asked, Brett and Michael, can you tell us what you guys are hearing? So before we get into this, Brett and I do hear stuff all the time. We're a little bit more reluctant to share those things. Sometimes it's not the point of what we're hearing, and we just use it to form, more, sound opinions on things that are going on. Do you have anything that you can share that you feel comfortable sharing? If not, I could at least do some things. I know you're on the spot a little bit, but it's fun. Let's
No, it's fine. I'll share one thing because it goes back a bit, and it's something I heard from multiple people, and it's not like a shocker. But yeah, Michael's right. Generally speaking, well, I won't speak for him. I'll speak for myself. I hear stuff from people plugged into the game. I would always rather get more of that information freely from them, that they're not worried that I'm going to like spin it up into a report and it might get back to their people or might impact them in the market. And so that's my sort of personal rule, which like, hey, if you're connected, you want to reach out to me, you hit me up. But I'll keep it under my hat, except for live streams during the blogathon. So what am I hearing? One thing that I heard sort of on a loop from multiple people going back maybe 3 weeks or so is that the extent to which the Cubs were very closely following the two big Marlins starters was not over-reported. That is to say, the Cubs' interest in either or both Sandy Alcantara and Edward Cabrera was, at least at that time, extremely legit. Like, they were watching them very closely, trying to discern, for example, what was going wrong with Sandy Alcantara, for example, and what's projectable about Edward Cabrera. So, do with that what you will in terms of your hopes and expectations for the trade deadline, because there are no trades that are more than 50% likely. That's not how it works, because there's always other interested teams. There's always things that can happen. Even the most, like, even if behind the scenes the Cubs were like, we are getting one of Cabrera or Alcantara, that's what we are doing, you still couldn't say it's more than 50% that they get one of them, because just stuff happens. And so that's a thing that I've heard, is that interest in at least evaluating them very seriously was legit.
Okay, well, Brett is betraying all of his sources. You heard it here first. I would never do that, so we're going to move on. No, I'm just kidding. But before we move on, I am going to just thank Felco, the home renewal experts. Bleacher Nation is proud to partner with Felco for almost 50 years. Felco has been transforming Chicagoland homes. Man, I snuck this right in. None of you guys were expecting this.
You did.
With their windows, siding, doors, and roofing, Felco is family-owned and prides themselves on delighting their customers with products made in the U.S. and designed specifically for the Midwest. Felco offers the perfect balance of beauty and energy efficiency. That was almost as fast as the radio people that they speed up at the end of commercials.
Seriously, dude, I listen to podcasts on 1.3 speed. Your read is going to be like, so.
There you go. All right. So I'll say some of the things that I've heard. So one, and I'm more comfortable sharing this one now because it's definitely not going to happen. The Cubs were pretty interested in Emmanuel Clase, from what I heard. That was one of their targets. Obviously things have changed now that he's on non-disciplinary leave. for the gambling investigation, which I suppose could turn into disciplinary leave. It's a really weird distinction to make when that's the reason for it. It feels pretty disciplinary. But that's one thing. I have also heard that they're very interested in Shane Bieber, and I think Shane Bieber is a really good target for the Cubs as the second pitcher they pick up. Unfortunately, I've also heard that the asking price for Shane Bieber is ridiculously high. And I'm not going to name the names. I'm not going to name the names, but this is what it is. One of the guys would be too much on his own. And they're asking for two guys that each individually would be too much for Shane Bieber on his own. So while I hope that the Guardians are just doing the dance and playing the game, that is not going to happen if that's how they really feel about his valuation. So that's one thing. And then before he got hurt, and here's my other one, and just before he got hurt, and again, this is not much of a surprise, but it is confirmation on Tuesday night before he got hit in the hand, or Monday night. I had heard that Eugenio Suarez was very much at the top of the Cubs wish list. They were sincere. Those reports are real. Jed really likes him, wants to find a way to get him on this team. And I think that it's going to probably hold true through today. So, if the Cubs could find a way to get Suarez and then get Shane Bieber as a secondary starter, I think that would be a huge deadline, with the assumption that the first starting pitcher they get he doesn't need to have the upside Bieber has, but he definitely needs to have the expectation of being there every fifth day from now through the end of the Cubs season, be it in September or October. That's what I'm hearing. Bieber, legitimate interest, but asking price way too high. Suarez, to the extent that the injury didn't change anything, high up on the Cubs wish list. Hey, we never do that. So you guys, basically one person just said, so you guys have heard the same thing everyone has already reported? Yeah, I mean, sorry, we could have reported it before a lot of them, but we just don't do that often. So
well, and let me amplify that too. That is often the case, that multiple people are hearing the same things from multiple sources. And do you know why? Because it's real.
Right.
That's also why, like, when I'm doing write-ups and sort of synthesizing reporting that's out there, there's a little bit of an art to it, because you're trying to deduce, okay, where might they be hearing this from? Where might they be hearing this from? How did those things coalesce and come together? And so that is to say, non-defensively, it isn't meaningless for us to be like, yeah, we're hearing that, because we are very likely hearing it from maybe different people than others.
I think this is a fun thing to talk about as a sort of side tangent. Trevor says we also don't really hear about what the Cubs are doing until it's done in the Jed era. Now, that's true. Ken Rosenthal in particular does not seem to have a line in on the Cubs front office. The Cubs are so frequently absent from his rumor roundups, which is strange because he has such good sources and often very, very strong information. Now it's also possible that his editorial threshold, is higher than what he's heard. And he's heard all these things, but doesn't feel confident saying it. But I will say that this year it's a little different. And a lot of the things that have been rumored and reported out there, both Brett and I are hearing behind the scenes, kind of like what we just talked about, but there's other ones too. And it's more than usual. I feel like the chatter has ticked up. And I don't know if that's just because the Cubs were so much more confident in their position as buyers earlier on, that there was more time for this information to get out there. Whereas the last two seasons, they were kind of playing it close, and even in 2021, I don't think we knew for sure they were going to blow it up at the deadline until they sort of lost the thread in June. So maybe that's why, but it does feel to me like there's been more out there behind the scenes than usual for the Jed era.
Yeah, I think things have certainly become more tight-lipped under Jed than they were under Theo, both publicly and privately. I think it's a little harder to get stuff. I was thinking back to the off season, some of the moves like Tucker, for example, even being a plausible target for the Cubs, I believe did not come out sort of seriously until about a week before the deal, and most of the stuff that dripped out after that was coming out of Houston, not Houston or national, not sort of Chicago directed. And so I do think they run a pretty tight ship. And that too, I think, to Michael's point and to the earlier question, is also why there's a lot of overlap right now in the things that are coming out about the Cubs, both because I think that they're accurate and because I guarantee there's stuff behind the scenes taking place that just hasn't gotten out because it's a very small circle at the highest levels in the organization that discuss certain level of deals.
Yeah, I think that tracks. What are you going to do overnight tonight in the middle of the blogathon to entertain yourself? Do you ever watch any TV or anything instead of just staying right up on Twitter?
So usually when it gets to that overnight period, about 2 a.m., that is when I'll put on some background stuff. Honestly, it's funny. For those of you who want to stay up, there ends up being enough people that are like, some people are on like late shift or early shift, like to sort of just chit chat with online or to create content for sort of silly middle of the night stuff, that it's super slow, but it isn't as, I don't know, disconnected from the content as I think it'll be each year. So to answer your question, my guess is I'll probably take a shower at some point to keep myself awake. I'll have an extra coffee at 3, and I might have a Marvel movie on in the background. I saw Fantastic Four this week and got me back in the Marvel mode a little bit. Nice. So I might just put on something.
All right, guys, we have probably about 4 or 5 minutes left here, shooting for 45 minutes. So get your final questions in here, and we'll try to answer them if there's any good ones. In the meantime, I will just remember back while we wait for some of these good questions. I think it was like 2011 or 12 when I was just a mere commenter on Bleacher Nation, and I was staying up with you in spirit through the blogathon. And getting so furious that you weren't including my tweets in the like roundups. I was like, come on. Like, I was like racking my brain for the coolest things to tweet. And you never did. And I've never forgotten it. So this has all been an elaborate setup to take you down from within. Now that I am on the inside, I'm going to destroy everything that you love about Bleacher Nation, which I already have.
You should just ruin it. Yeah. You should be thanking me because I drove that hunger that I kept. It's like a parent. It's like a parent who withholds, to just like keep that spirit of effort. And so I'm always withholding, Michael.
Okay. Let's see some, I got some good ones here to end with. We'll do 2 or 3.
Rapid fire.
Sure. Final deadline prediction overall of what happens. Just try to keep it, you don't have to pick specific names, but just give me your.
Cubs add 2 starting pitchers, 1 reliever, 1 position player who hasn't been discussed a whole lot.
Okay. I'm going to say they add 1 surefire starter, 1 starter that has upside, but like isn't right at the moment for one reason or another. And Bieber kind of being the model there, but there are other options like him out there. I think they get Suarez, and I think they get 1 good, not great reliever that we're not talking about. That's kind of what I think is a realistic. I hope for more than that, but that's what I think is realistic.
I mean, both of those would be very good deadlines.
Yep, so. Absolutely. Here's a good one. A prospect like Jonathan Long appears blocked and is a perfect asset to land a good reliever. Which one reliever would you target for him specifically? I don't know if you have to answer that exactly that way, but Johnny Long is like sort of a piece.
Yeah, I love the potential there because, like, watch him swing. Just about nobody hits the ball as hard as he does. Now, there would still be some work on the swing necessary for him to maximize the damage that comes from hitting the ball super hard because it's not always the best sort of angle and directionality. But he just hits the crap out of the ball. Still not sure he can play third. Iowa has had him at first base more. So it's not sure what he would be on the big league Cubs, but doesn't have to go on the 40-man yet because he's not Rule 5 eligible. So the Cubs wouldn't have to deal him right now. Like, he's not blocked in that sense. If they did, I hope they get good value. Like, I hope it's like just as a just to calibrate where I see the value, it would be like long plus a decent second piece for Bednar. That would be kind of what I would see.
So I see it going that way, or I see it as when there's a dream scenario for like a Joe Ryan or Mackenzie Gore or whoever, that long can be a pretty good second piece or maybe third, even if it's a very big deal. Like he has value, and depending on which type of player you're targeting is how he'll be used as either the centerpiece, second or third. But I think that there's a lot there. I actually love that he's having a good season because he's exactly the kind of guy that gets dealt. I mean,
do you know he's the kind of guy who, once he gets traded, all of a sudden gets a lot of national attention because people realize he's a StatCast darling, and they're like, wow, exactly. Do you see what this guy's doing?
But although, to be fair, the last time that happened with Cam Smith, it ended up being super true. So, okay. And then here's our last one, which I think is a good one to end on. And it is, which prospect do you least want to see get traded? From Luke N. I didn't know. I don't know. Niebauer. Niebauer.
Yeah. I mean, I'll pick one. There should be two.
And so I'm going to pick one. You're
going to pick the other. Yeah, you know who it is. So I'll take one. You take the other. I'm going to say Jefferson Rojas, shortstop prospect who just reached AA. He's still very young. His swing is gorgeous. He makes very high quality contact. Still has some development to go. But I don't know that he's appropriately valued out there yet. So I don't want to see the Cubs trade him yet.
Yeah, that's the other one. The other one's Jackson Wiggins.
There you go.
I knew that was going to be your choice. I fear that the Cubs, despite their apparent strides in pitching prospect development, are still very far behind. And when I see a team like the Brewers identify the right guys, even like Priester, let alone Mizurowski, it's like, I don't know if we can really be trading away guys that have the potential that Wiggins has and has demonstrated in his results, not just his potential this year at times. And so I would be a little reluctant to deal him, but I'm going to wrap all of this up with one huge caveat that, unlike the way Jed Hoyer says it, which is at this point lost all meaning, no one for me is untouchable this year in terms of the Cubs prospects, if the return is the sort of piece that can help the Cubs get over the top, and especially if it's for more than 1 year of control. You just can't hold on to those guys. But I say that out of one side of my mouth after just having said that, trading Wiggins would make me a little bit nervous. But Wiggins and Rojas are definitely the two guys. And I think the theme between us on those two is that our internal evaluation of those prospects is higher than what we think the perceived value of those prospects to the rest of the industry.
Exactly.
That's exactly. And it's not crazy because we do follow these guys more closely. Obviously the front offices should know, but that's kind of where I am. But again, like someone's just said, Wiggins is that prospect for me unless he's in a Joe Ryan trade. That was Mike G. It's like, yeah, you get Joe Ryan. Yep. Okay, let's go. Yep. That's exactly the type of thing that they should do. So you want to take us home?
Yeah, let's wrap it. So this was great, folks. So the blogathon is ongoing, is going through tomorrow, 9 p.m. Central. We are raising funds for Make-A-Wish Illinois. Check it out at the site if you can. I am Brett Taylor. That's Michael Cerami. This is the BN Cubs podcast brought to you by Ankin Law, 3126 million, injury law made personal. Appreciate you folks for listening on the pod side. Appreciate you folks for joining on the live stream side. And hopefully you dug this. We liked doing it. And we will talk to you again soon. Take care.
I didn't click end. I just wanted you to linger on.
I was going to say, it's like, does he know how to end it? Is he looking for the button?
Here we go. There's two clicks. See you later, everybody. Bye.